area. This brings up your public and private goods situation. So when you think about public and private goods, it's goods that have like, can you exclude people from it? And if somebody else uses it, does it really hurt your experience? So when you think about externalities and what causes a positive thing to happen, most of the time we're going to find those external things that are positives. Maybe they should just be provided by the public good, provided by government through tax dollars. But private goods are things that I can exclude you from it. But then once I exclude you from it, then you can't have it, number one, but also like you having it means nobody else can have it. So typically what happens in this one is we draw like these boxes, and they're in your textbook, and there's like it's like a four boxes, and then this is like excludable, non-excludable, and this is like rival, non-rival. And when you get something that's excludable and rival, then what ends up happening is here, these should be private goods, okay? And all that means is I can exclude you from it, and you having it means it's yours, okay? Public goods. Public goods are non-excludable and non-rival. So a public good comes down here. Non-excludable, these should be pure public. And non-rival. What does that mean? Well, that means it's something like national defense, right? In national defense, I can't exclude you from national defense. Like if you don't pay your taxes, the national defense still protects the terrorists from coming here and killing you. Now, should it? I don't know. That's an interesting question. You know, if you don't pay your taxes and we were to exclude you out, we'd be like, hey, terrorists, go get that guy. But we don't do that. Instead, you get the benefit of national defense even if you don't pay your taxes. So I can't exclude you from getting the benefit of national defense. At the same time, national defense exists, and it means non-rival because, well, you getting national defense and your neighbor getting national defense isn't really harming our national defense system. Like it just is. So as you look at it, those things that fall into that category are pure public things. So as you look at anything that's pure public, oftentimes it becomes, I don't know, they're difficult to argue about sometimes because you're like, well, should we have that for everybody or not? But basically, if I can't exclude you from it and, really you being, having that service doesn't harm anybody else, then we should do it that way. These become the ones that are a little more interesting. A common resource. Common resources, I cannot exclude you from it, and it is rival. And common resources go down here. Common resources are typically destroyed. There's a thing called the tragedy of the commons. If you think about just the commons at school when you were in school, the problem with the commons is I can't exempt you from the commons, so I can't exclude you from going to the commons. But then rival means like once you sit down, that space is sort of yours, right? So you can do whatever you want in that space, and I can't exclude you from going to that space. So if you make a mess or whatever, it's kind of like your space. And if you don't clean up after yourself and leave, then you wreck it for everybody else. Public restrooms, a good example, because I can't exclude you from going to the bathroom or the restroom. But then once you're in that stall, man, that's your little private place. So whatever you choose to do in there, you do it, and then you tend to wreck it. Well, at least the boys' bathrooms at school. So as you look, the last one's called artificially scarce goods. These I can exclude you from, but they are non-rival. So these are artificially scarce. Sometimes artificially scarce. Sometimes these are called toll goods. If you think about toll goods, that's the best example. A toll system that you have in place, you got like a pay to use it, right? I can exclude you from it, like the tollway, by charging a fee, etc. But then once you're on the tollway, really, is your car bothering anybody else's car? Typically, no. So excludable, non-rival. A lot of times people say like an amusement park might go here or something like that because I can exclude you from it by like Six Flags, by charging that ticket price. But then once you're in the park still runs, right? If I put one more person in there, it probably doesn't change your experience all that much. Here is the graph or the chart I was looking at. Private goods, common, public, artificially scarce. You can pause the video and look at that if you want to. There's examples in there. Then tragedy of the commons, artificially scarce. And sometimes we want to do things that do promote efficiency, antitrust laws, anti-regulatory things. This is where, I don't know, it's kind of like the chapter at the end where they just throw random stuff in here. I don't know if anybody was really going to be too particular if you didn't know some of this stuff in a regular, econ class like 101 if you were getting credit in college, let's say. You could do like natural monopolies are in here. We talked about natural monopolies a little bit in the monopoly section. You can review that. And last but not least, I think maybe 79, but 78 here, this is income distribution and income inequality. When you look at poverty, it's interesting because poverty is like, there's definitely reasons for poverty. Like a lot of times, especially certain kids, they're like, you're just poor because, you want to be. What they've done a lot of studies on being poor, and usually it's something happened to you that made you poor. Sometimes it's medical bills or loss of a job or loss of a spouse or something like that. Sometimes mental illness, etc. But those are all things that could cause poverty. And then the problem is you can't just fix poverty by throwing money at it. You got to fix the problem of poverty. And if poverty's problem is like, hey, those people that are poor right now don't have the like some human capital, like they don't have enough education. Well, then what you got to do is give them some sort of education so then they can get a job and then they're not poor anymore. It's not just like, well, give them some money. Well, give them some money doesn't work. You have to do something to fix the core problem in there. The Lorenz curve, basically all the Lorenz curve is, it's showing you a curve here where this line would be if 50% of the people had 50% of the money, and then this line is what really happens, and then the area of inequality is the difference. So in this case here, like this is the percent of the income and this is the percent of the population. Okay, so this is 50% of the people, that's 50% of the money. Well, here 50% of the people have about 15% of the money, right? And there's this top, let's say 10% have almost 80-90% of the money, and that's what happens in America, right? Like there's no way that you could, like, you're kind of stuck where you are. It's very tough to get into that top echelon because the people there are so small and they have all the money. So when you have like billionaires and billionaires out there, and then you have 50% of the people that are below the poverty line, well, that's kind of what living in America is like. And the closer you get, like if this line goes out here and then straight up, well, that's really unequal. And then if it's like a little more shallow, let's say, then it's a little more equal. So if you have something on the Lorenz curve, like sometimes this would be a multiple choice question on the AP test. Obviously not this year. The Gini coefficient, they break it into these quintiles, and they tell you like how much money is in each particular quintile. They try to analyze that. Like we do have problems, or the poverty, we try to like fix that. And some of them are like Social Security, unemployment benefits, like a welfare situation. Some of those programs, really do help. Sometimes I have kids that really complain about something like welfare, and then you could be on welfare too. If you think being on welfare is so great, like go ahead and do it. It's not great. People that need to be on welfare need that extra assistance, and everybody, or some kids, I guess, they feel like, oh, everybody's scamming the system. Very few people are scamming the system. Most people really need the system. And then when they use those things, then they don't do something else that's negative to hurt society. For example, if I can give you some unemployment and that keeps you afloat so you don't have to lose your house, then maybe you're not stealing from your neighbor to be able to afford things, because instead we gave you some unemployment and then there's a benefit to you. if I gave you something like health care, then you're not in my emergency room sitting with a cough, waiting to get something like antibiotics for some kind of cold situation. Whereas, you got so many people clogging that up that then when somebody comes in with a heart attack, they can't get through the line to get service. So these kinds of things are what we're talking about and what probably needs to be done by the government to be able to establish that. People will always complain about like redistribution and who should get taxed and then where does my money go, and I don't want to benefit this person because I don't like them. um, if you have money, you're going to get taxed, and the taxes are going to go, and we hope that we elect people that is going to make the taxes go for people that really need it. And then if you can help those people that really need it, you're probably doing a good job for society, trying to make that a little more equal. Last but not least is the Laffer curve. The Laffer curve, Arthur Laffer actually supposedly drew this on a bar napkin for President Reagan. And what he said was, if tax revenue, we can maximize tax revenue up here if we find a sweet spot about the tax rate. And basically what this is saying is, if I tax you 100%, we're going to bring in zero revenue because you'll just stop working. Because if I tax you at 100%, why would you go to work, right? All your money is going to go to the government. So what Arthur Laffer said was, we need to cut taxes way down, and then we'll have this sweet spot up here. The problem was, it wasn't really cut taxes from 100% to 10%. It was cut taxes from maybe 100% to 35% or something like that. But we cut taxes significantly. The Reagan administration, taxes used to be way higher on certain things. They cut that way back. And what happened was the Laffer curve turned out to not be true. What happened with President Reagan was they actually added the most debt to the debt clock than any president ever, because when they decided to not take in any tax revenue and then they spent to beat the Soviet Union, the tax burden, the tax debt to society went way up. So if you want to know why are we having these debt clock kind of issues, President Reagan really added to that debt clock. Because when you cut taxes, you don't bring in any revenue, and when you spend to on defense, etc., you can see right here in some of the top things that we spend on, the largest budget items: Medicare, Social Security, defense, right? And the fourth biggest one now is interest on the debt itself. So when you look at this debt clock, it is huge. $76,000 per citizen, $204,000 per taxpayer. But how did that happen, and how did it get so out of control? It started really Reagan administration, and then the Great Recession didn't help. And probably now isn't helping. So as you look at it, that's all of economics. Hopefully that helped you get through that last unit, even though we didn't have to do it for the AP test. If you want to, ask a question, shoot me one in the Google Classroom. All right, well, that's it for econ. Talk to you later, and bye.